Welcome back to OpenLine. We are talking about squatters in Tennessee. What rights do they have? And essentially the answer is there are no squatter rights in Tennessee. We have with us our legal expert, Nick Leonardo, talking about this, streaming this live on Facebook. A lot of comments on Facebook after we just played that story from the other nights. And I'm just going to read some of them. Yolanda Hale, my mother died in 2010. My brother moved into the house. I don't have the money for lawyers to essentially get him out. So this is a case where she's calling him a squatter. Mother died, brother moves in, sister doesn't want that. What's the situation there?
Well, I think it's important to point out in all these cases, the exclusive way to get rid of people like this would be to do a detainer warrant or an eviction in our general sessions courts. You know, the courts of first resort. And that, usually doesn't take too long. You can get in there and do that within a couple weeks. And then it takes 10 days for the judgment to be final. And then at that point in time, the sheriff will put their stuff in the street. But in the case that Yolanda was talking about, it seems as though we talk about this color of title. If this is her biological brother, and this is together, they share the same mother, depending on what the will said, if there wasn't a will, but he could very well be there under color of title. He could be an heir to this property, okay? And so as a result, his rights may be a little bit different, but in that particular case, he would still owe rent to the other brothers and sisters, or he would owe rent to the estate. He can't just stay there for free. So Yolanda, the best thing to do, I know it's a sibling rivalry, but the best thing to do would be go down to the General Sessions Court and file your own eviction. You can do it, they have a form, you can do it in your own handwriting, and they'll put it on there, and it's not very difficult to do, but that's the way to get your brother out.
Then Crystal Ponkney Henson writes, what about someone that you let live with you for 6 to 12 months or live there, then you tell them to leave? So you allowed them in, but then you want them out. What about a situation like that?
Kristen, that's a great question, and to I guess really make your point, I've had parents who have children that just won't fly the coop, and so
children who are squatters.
Yes, well, so I've had to do detainer warrants for parents to remove children from their home. Okay,
wow.
Adult children. So in this particular case, if that person's been living with you, then they're not getting any sort of ownership interest or any kind of equitable interest. They just, they're a month-to-month tenant essentially, and you have to go, like Yolanda, you'd have to go through General Sessions Court and file an eviction, and it's $88, I believe, to do that. And the sheriff will serve them and go in there and get a judgment for possession and get them removed.
That's crazy. You have to do it with, but yeah, that's how it works. Then Letha Ann Barnes, and I think I know the answer to this. Bottom line, she watched the story. Does he get to stay? He's been there 2 years. Bottom line, does he get to stay?
No, I mean, obviously he's not going to get to stay, but he can stay all he wants to until the real owner in interest, which appears to still be a shell game, but Nation Star, or they'd have to hire some lawyers in Wilson County and go up there and in front of Judge Tatum or in front of Haywood Berry and file their own eviction or detainer warrant. And I would be curious to know. I mean, if I was at Nation Star and this wasn't done rather soon, someone would be losing their job.
Yes.
Because the insurance that they have, if Nation Star carries any insurance on its rolling inventory, for lack of a better term, it's not going to cover you having notice of something like this. If he were to burn the place down, Nation Star would be without recourse, because I'm sure that the insurance they have does not allow people to just come in and live without color of title, essentially be the squatter. So Nation Star is really in a bad spot. But then again, what I know about Nation Star a lot of times, they're not the top echelon of the mortgage companies in my experiences.
Becky McQuarrie says laws should be changed so that police can legally put them out. And I got this with this house a little bit. There were some residents who complained. They called the police said this is more of a civil matter. If there's a squatter, is that a police issue?
No, so the police aren't involved in that. The police would come out, make a report, and if somebody wants to, they could arrest for trespassing. Even though it's a misdemeanor, if you don't have the owner's effective consent and yet you remain on the property and you continue to remain on the property, that's one of the 7 exceptions of which you can be arrested. But in this particular case, actually Ben Hall had him removed because he was arrested for the aggravated assault, and he was on probation, which means that there was a probation violation. So once he came through the Wilson County Jail, they said, hey buddy, where have you been? You've been on probation, you've been absconding. So again, he's probably not back out because he violated probation, and I'm sure they saw this story and they may have very well placed his original probate sentence into effect. So he may very well just be in jail as a result of the actions he took against you.
That's right. He was arrested shortly after this for the aggravated assault. Then he bonded out, but then it was a probation violation on a theft charge, and he's still in as a result of that.
Right.
That's where it stands right now.
And of course, the interesting thing, though, you wouldn't believe this, but NationStar is still responsible, or whoever the lender is that owns this, is still responsible for his personal effects. And so they can't just trash it. There's things that they have to, especially those cars. There's a whole lot to do about getting rid of these cars. And the code has a provision, but these lawyers, you can't just take it to the dump. I mean, you have to secure it. You have to go through proper channels. So it's a real nightmare getting rid of his personality while he's incarcerated. Elsie
Stewart asked, and I'm going to start taking phone calls, why is it he was able to pay the land taxes, the property taxes? Why was he able to do that?
Well, I mean, you know, and thank goodness. I mean, if you walk into our property assessor, Miss Vivian Will, if you walk into her office and say, I want to pay property taxes at 300 James Robertson Parkway, they're going to take your money, and that's what they need to do. So they don't check your ID or to make sure, you know, because a lot of times you may have, older people may have their children come in and pay, people not even related to them. I've even paid my neighbor's property tax who's elderly once. I went by there, you know, he had a check written, but they just want the money and they give you the receipt. So
if you don't pay, obviously the county will sell the house on the courthouse steps.
Correct.
So
correct.
Property taxes have to be paid.
Correct.
And I think that's how this is resolved. Sometimes these things fall through the cracks. Banks forget about them, whatever. Then they're sold on the courthouse steps, and it kind of goes away. Then you have an owner. This is a case where the guy did. He paid the property taxes, and they'll take his money, and then they won't sell it. He also was able to set up utilities. There's no law that says. I mean, people ask me that. How could he set up utilities? Well, he just went and paid, and they set him up.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to get power in your name at NES. You know? I mean, it's and as it should be. It shouldn't be an onerous thing to set up utilities.
All right, I'm going to go back to Facebook here, but let's also go to the phones. Let's go to James. Hello, James.
Hello.
Go right ahead.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question. Okay, about 2 years ago, I divorced my wife and moved to another county. Well, she was still staying in the house. I didn't want to put her out of the house because I had a 7-year-old grandson there. Well, the house was my grandparents. And then when they passed away, it became my mother and her brothers. Then when my mother passed away, the house, you know, I got her share and my uncle got his share, but there was no will or nothing like that. Well, when I moved, I sent my uncle all the papers. He's supposed to be getting all the paperwork together and everything to evict her. But she's still in the house, and I was wondering, do she have any squatters' rights? And when I divorced her, my attorney said that he sent her a letter about getting out of the house, but, you know, I don't know, really, did he send the letter, or did he talk to her attorney, or what? So I'm just wondering, does she have any kind of squatters' rights?
All right. What do you think about that?
James, that's an exceedingly complicated issue, but the answer to your question is absolutely not. What I would probably do is refer back to my divorce decree, my final decree of divorce, and in there you should have a marital dissolution agreement, and it should state that who gets possession of the residence and the like. And if she's supposed to move out of the marital residence and did not do that, or move out of this particular home and hasn't done that yet, you could always file a petition for contempt in the same court that your divorce was granted. But if it's a different set of facts and it's silent on the divorce side, then whoever is the successor in interest in this home could file an eviction, and it'll be a whole lot cheaper and a whole lot quicker than going back on a contempt in the original divorce court.
And that was a complicated setup. But the last part of that question was, does she have any squatters' rights? And the bottom line is here, I'm no lawyer, but there are no squatters' rights. There's no such thing, right?
Well, there are squatters' rights if you meet these things that we've talked about.
Okay.
And squatters' rights are a continuous trespass, or however you want to call it. But, you know, you have to prove, we have different standards of proof in the court system. We got beyond a reasonable doubt that we use in the criminal context. We also have a preponderance of the evidence, which is, you know, just 51% in civil. But on some things, we have what's called clear and convincing evidence. And so I always tell people that standard is like it's first and, you know, it's first and 10, you know, and on the other team's goal line. So, I mean, you're right there at the end, and it's a really huge thing. Clear and convincing evidence has to be demonstrated that you had open and exclusive, or you have actual possession of it. It's open and notorious, which means you're not doing it secretly. Okay, you're doing it out in the open, and that it's during this time period, it's continuous and peaceful. You can't go in there and just, you know, with a gun and say it's yours. And it has to be adverse to an owner's another owner's interest. So all of those factors the court's going to look at, and so after you've been there 7 years under color of title with those factors, you can have a possession right, which means that you can't be removed but you don't own anything, okay? But if you've been there 20 years, okay, and those same factors can be proven, then you could get title by adverse possession. But again, clear and convincing evidence, legitimately there under color of title, open and notorious, peaceable, adverse to the owner's interest, and continuous. So that is almost impossible to establish because the owner has to know what you're doing.
Right.
So you just don't see a whole lot of that. But you do see the 7-year thing in property boundary disputes, like I said, with fences and little things between neighbors, yes.
All right, we have several people asking, Becky McCrary and others, bottom line, when is he going to be evicted and why the delay? So there are the people, they see the story, he's admitted that he moved in without the permission of without anyone's permission, he just moved in. Why is he still there? When is he going to be evicted? Why the delay?
Well, I mean, right now, I don't think anybody really knew. I mean, that's one thing we see with the media on a regular basis, that, they really do have positive effects in society. So they called, and you guys did a story, and it raised some eyebrows. And so I'm sure at this point, Nation Star even sent you a letter. Yeah. So I'm sure at this point in time that there's been some eviction proceeding that has already been underway, even though he's incarcerated for the probation violation. And it shouldn't take very long at all, but the fact that he's incarcerated and you have a problem with all his personal effects, it may take a little bit longer, but I would be very surprised if when he gets out, he comes back to that property, because at that point in time, they could put the sheriff's department on notice that that is a trespass.
Right. And so there is a legal process they have to go through. Even though he's there inappropriately, there still has to be a legal process, and that can take some time.
Yeah, but the process too, General Sessions Court has exclusive jurisdiction, which means it's the only place you go for eviction. So if you wanted to evict the people out of the Batman building, or if you wanted to evict the predators out of Bridgestone, you'd still have to go through the same process.
All right, we are going to take a break. If you want to call, there's the number at the bottom of the screen, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We're also streaming live on our Facebook page. If you want to comment, we will take your question, read your comment, whatever, right on Facebook. So we'll take a break, be back right after this.